insane it is. You don't have to have a PhD in law to know there's something seriously wrong. I have many cross cases in the United Kingdom. I had a case earlier this year about a nurse who had the effrontery to offer a patient, a lady called Caroline Petrie, whether she ought to pray for a patient. The patient said, yes, please. She prayed for the patient. Someone overheard that and reported her, and she was going to be dismissed for breaching the diversity policy of our health authorities. One of the most frightening cases I had was a man called David Booker, and in fact it didn't get much publicity this, but I actually found it one of the most frightening. He was an employee at a housing association. He was on the night shift. About 1 o'clock in the morning, he's in a conversation with a co-worker. Could have been at a bus stop, but he had it at work. Poor man. And he's asked by his co-worker, what do Christians think about marriage? She asks him the question. He replies in colloquial terms, I'm agin it. We're agin premarital sex and we're agin same-sex. I was instructed in the case and I saw her letter of complaint to the boss. She found it offensive that anyone could be against premarital sex, heard me right, premarital sex, and against same-sex. That was deemed to be hate speech, anti-discriminatory speech against people who live together. He would have been sacked immediately if I hadn't been instructed. Is that not frightening? Is that not... And then I have stacks of cases like this. That is on the Human Rights Act. Some of it's heading anyway because there's a general animus to many forms of religion in a secularizing state and society. But the Human Rights Act is a significant problem. And frankly, if someone had said to me in 1998, when this wonderful act was coming through, that will be the direction of your practice in religious liberty, I'd have said, you're mad. I'd have said, you are mad. And I do it daily, and I have a case list full of it. I've got many other cases. Just by touching, I'm going to the European Court. We have 2 European courts. It's very confusing. I'm going to the European Court in Luxembourg, which is the EU court. We also have a European Court, Strasbourg, which is our human rights court. But I'm going to the Luxembourg one on Awaz, where all the Christian workers were dismissed for criticising Islam. When I say criticising Islam, they just said they didn't believe Muhammad was the final prophet. I've got a case called McFarland. He was an employee. It's a very important case, in fact, on this one. We're waiting for judgment on that. But he was an employee for Relate, our marriage guidance counselling service, and he merely expressed a concern at counselling in directive sexual techniques. So that's the actual physical act on same-sex couples. It's a particular area expressed. He was immediately dismissed. Now, that's actually a very important decision because courts in the United Kingdom have held that religious folk are discriminatory and you're entitled not to employ and you can dismiss religious folk. And that was from another case, which I wasn't responsible for, you'll be glad to know, where a marriage registrar didn't want to marry a same-sex partner. Same-sex rights were deemed fundamental and constitutional and granted by Parliament. Therefore, the religious person was denying a fundamental constitutional right to somebody. Therefore, the religious person was discriminatory. Therefore, it was legitimate for an employer to eradicate discrimination and fulfill government objectives. Therefore, it was legitimate for the employer to dismiss the religious person and never to employ a religious person. I mean, have you ever heard any such nonsense in your life? And one of the things where we will be arguing in McFarland, we have argued, is a number of complex things, but there's a religious bar to office now. And we haven't had one since the repeal of the Test and Corporations Act, when we permitted the good Catholics to assume public functions in the United Kingdom in 1828. Got another case called John's, and a couple again is not permitted to foster or adopt because they're Christians. A lovely couple, but they can't adopt or foster because they're Christian, because the foster or adopted child may be homosexual and they may not support that activity. So there you have it. I could go on and on and on. I have a very full caseload. The law is extremely complex on it. But what I will say is, did you ever think those cases would arise in the United Kingdom? Yes. Okay, well, my case is gone, because I didn't. And when this legislation was passed, as I said, if someone had said to me, you would be fighting for someone to wear a cross at British Airways in 8 years' time, I said, I thought, you're mad. You're mad. And I tell you where it goes, and you forgive me on this, because part of my work requires being updated on various events around the world. But I downloaded something just before I left to give you an example where it's going to go. And this is just a downloaded from the internet press report. And this is what the press report says. British Columbia's Supreme Court is being asked to decide if polygamy should remain illegal in Canada, the province's Attorney General announced Thursday. Attorney General Mike DeJong says he believes polygamy is against the law and should remain so, but he said the justice system needs clarity about whether Canada's laws barring multiple marriages is constitutional. Now, it's a very good example of this. It's a very, very good example. It's something that Bob Carr needs to bear in mind, and Australian federal parliamentarians. First, there's a problem here. Canada's got lots of Mormons. We've actually got lots of Muslims. Mormons want multiple wives. Muslims want 4 wives. And we have actually that problem in the United Kingdom right now. When he supports Canada's law banning multiple marriages, i.e. supporting marriage, he's met with the argument, well, I've got Article 8 and 12 rights to marry in privacy, and I've got my religious rights, and you're offending it. He doesn't know what the law is. He's scared to enforce it. We have what we call the not yet judgment, because there's no actual law. The court will probably say, at the moment we're not there yet, but hey, try again in a year's time and you may get what you want. But there's something else very frightening behind it. What's frightening behind it is that the democratic process has to consider and apply what is important in our society. Is marriage important in our society? Is the upbringing of children something important in our society? And these are very big decisions. Now, if this case goes forward and a judge says, which they do say, same-sex marriages are fine, but we think they should be monogamous. And of course, once you've crossed the Rubicon, other groups say, why not to us? And when that goes to court, the argument is, what's it to you? What's it to you? I'm a big boy and 2 grown-up ladies want to marry me. They're of consenting adult age. What's it to you? I've got the right. And that's a very difficult argument, isn't it, in our autonomous, individualistic human rights culture, to pose it, if people voluntarily want to go together. And in Britain, we have a particular twist on that, because what the Muslims say is, well, you're very immoral, you British. You sleep around, you've got several girlfriends with several fathers and several children. At least we're going to regulate the relationship and protect these women. So you can see where it goes. One person is going to reopen the whole meaning of marriage, which is clearly, in my view, a decision for the Parliament. Part of my practice on the judgeocracy business, we call it judgeocracy in Britain. It's personal predilection of individual judges deciding these matters. And of course it represents a transfer of these decision-making powers to the courts. And a lot of my practice is totally illegitimate, and I accept it's totally illegitimate.